Welcome to the newest episode of Spill the Milk. My name's Nikki. I'm a registered nurse and I'm a board certified lactation consultant with over 20 years experience, and I love helping you. So in this episode, we're going to talk about some interview questions that you may want to ask a lactation consultant before you hire them. So here's some cover statements I want you to know. Not all lactation support is created equal. And when you're exhausted, overwhelmed, and worried about your baby, you don't have time for trial and error. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through the exact questions parents should ask when choosing a lactation consultant. We're talking credentials, experience, latch teaching, growth charts, tongue ties, triple feeding, tools, follow-up care, and the red flags that matter. This isn't about finding the perfect breastfeeding journey. It's about finding support that is evidence-based, really compassionate, and centered on you and your baby and your family. So, if you're listening to this because breastfeeding feels harder than you expected, you're not failing. You may just not have the right support. Here's a big thing that I hear all the time. I think that parents assume all lactation consultants practice the same, and we most certainly do not. And I think that while every lactation consultant has very good intentions, not everyone is versed in everything. And so finding someone who can conform to what you want is very important. We don't all practice the same, that's for sure. Choosing the wrong support can increase stress, guilt, and burnout. So today, I'm giving you the questions I wish every family had before they hired help. And this is going to help you if you're pregnant. You guys, you do not want to be in the middle of a storm and desperate for help and get handed someone. You want to be part of this process and this choosing process. So interviewing lactation consultants and getting to know them prior to having a problem is very essential. So let's talk about the credentials that are out there for lactation consultants in general. And again, I've seen some very, very, very good lactation consultants who don't have the IBCLC credential. So I wanted to make that statement. So what are some of the credentials? Well, of course, an IBCLC is an internationally board certified lactation consultant. It's the premier globally recognized credential for advanced lactation care, handling complex medical and feeding challenges. Then there's the CLC, which is what I was prior to becoming an IBCLC because I was not a registered nurse and I had to choose a different pathway. A CLC is a certified lactation counselor. These providers are skilled in clinical support and general breastfeeding issues. Then there's also a credential called CBS, Certified Breastfeeding Specialist. It's a stepping stone credential for basic education and support, referring out complex cases. Then you have the CLE or CLEC, which is a certified lactation educator/counselor. They focus on providing evidence-based education and supporting families. There are other people who have credentials, and they may not be specific to lactation, but that doesn't mean they lack experience. Registered nurses often specialize in lactation with advanced roles like advanced nurse lactation consultant. Midwives, they provide integrated care supporting breastfeeding to birth. There's dietitians out there. There's doulas. There's PT, OT, speech language pathologists. All these people may have a little bit of information when it comes to the breastfeeding family. So you want to know that person's credentials. But I think this is another big one. And listen, volumes matter. So you want to ask, how many babies have you seen? Because I'm here to tell you, I did not know half of what I knew now in my first 5 years of being a lactation consultant because I needed to be exposed to normal, natural motherhood experiences. And just having a very small amount of experience didn't help me understand the breastfeeding diet as much. So you want to ask them, how many babies have you seen? And we should all know our numbers. What ages do you work with the most? Here's a big one, because newborn experience is not going to help you at 3, 4, and 5 months. So you want to know the age range that this provider sees. Because again, if she specializes in a newborn and you've got a 3-month-old, she may not be able to help you as much. You want someone who regularly sees babies like yours, not someone Googling as they go. Because again, the more exposure that someone has to normal, the more the red flags are going to present themselves. So the more babies, the lot more experience that person's going to have. I think another good thing that you guys need to also invest in is, I know insurance companies hand you a lactation consultant. You need to interview the person that your insurance company is telling you to go to prior to going, because maybe this is something you need to save up to do to get you the lactation consultant who serves you the best. So let's talk about philosophy and feeding goals. You want to ask this lactation consultant what she talks about. Is she a feed on demand, but by the third hour kind of gal? Or is she a feed every 3 hours on a rigid schedule and rigid protocol? Is she more parent led? Or again, is she more of a scheduler? Because this needs to match. But you're going to use this information because you need to explore what those different kinds of providers are going to be offering and whether it matches with your parenting style. Now, you guys know I am a parent-led lactation consultant. I believe in feeding on demand, but by the third hour until your baby regains birth weight. And then I say, we need to be feeding on demand, not by a schedule. And I give you the reasons why I feel that way. So this is very important. Here's another one. How does she define success in her practice? Beyond just the exclusive breast milk feeding relationship, how does she define success? What is success to her? What is success for her parents? Because sometimes, again, I'm going to relate back to myself. I get those parents who are completely fine offering some formula and they don't mind. That is success in my eyes. So I don't have this rigid, like, this is how you must do it. I offer several options. What is their support for pumping, combo feeding, and supplementation? That all goes back to that success. What does that look like for that lactation consultant? Because again, we have to be open-minded. You need to explore her answers. See the pros and the cons of her answers. Red flags that get said and that you need to make sure you heard. If she uses words like, if moms would just try harder, no, that's not great. Babies should. That's another strong word. However, with this word, the babies should, what needs to be said before that is most babies should, because we know that not all babies fit into a box and not all parenting methods work for every baby. Another one, this is the only way. So it's like the my way or the highway type of attitude. Again, this goes back to what kind of lactation consultant is she? And again, it's very important that your lactation consultant can support you no matter your decision. Her opinion is just her opinion. Her opinion is based on her own expectations for that mom. So we need to be careful when we're doing this. Good lactation care adapts to your baby, not the other way around. So let's get into this third segment, latch, teaching, and skill building. You need to ask questions like what actual latch teaching looks like for her. A big one for me is, are you really hands-on when you're teaching latch or are you hands-off? Because you guys, having a lactation consultant who has the skill to teach you without touching your baby gives you the most power. Having a lactation consultant who can describe a breastfeeding latch without having to jump in and put her hands on you, well, that's going to give you so much power because when she leaves, she didn't do anything besides offer you education. So again, hands on or hands off? Does she know a lot about latch? Does she observe a full feeding? And can she explain latch so you can repeat it at home? Again, hands off. You also need to make sure she has consent-based report. If she chooses to be a toucher, she needs to ask you, are you okay with me touching your breast? Are you okay with me touching your baby? Because again, she needs your consent. If you leave a consult still unsure how to latch your baby on your own, something is missing. Something is missing. Does she offer you follow-up bits and pieces of information? Does she review with you things that she went over? Again, this is part of skill building. Another great group of questions is when you're starting to talk about growth charts, intake, and feeding expectations. You need to make sure her expectations meet World Health Organization standards. You need to make sure that her expectations match those of a breast milk only fed baby, if that's what you're choosing to do. She needs to be able to dig deep into the different growth charts that are out there. She needs to, at bare minimum, be using the World Health Organization growth chart. And she should know the difference to be able to help combat pediatricians who use the CDC growth chart. So you need to ask her, what growth charts do you use? She needs to be able to answer to you why breastfed babies grow differently. Does she use cue-based feeding or does she practice timed feeding? Because if she's practicing timed feeding, that is a huge red flag because she's not teaching you to trust your baby and your body. She's teaching you to use a clock. And clock feeding is a very archaic way of teaching breastfeeding. It doesn't take into consideration flow rate, latch experience, or baby's age. Timed feeding should never be practiced. If you hear that from her, that is a big red flag. Can she teach you the cues? Can she tell you, hey, these are the early signs of hunger. These are the later signs of hunger. This is a you should have fed me before sign of hunger. Does she know those? Can she teach you what fullness looks like in a breast milk fed baby? She also should be able to tell you the harm of rigid clocks and apps. She needs to be encouraging of the trust relationship that you will have to build with your baby and your body. And you can ask her how she does that. So breastfed babies are not meant to be fed by the clock. You guys know, if you follow me, you've heard me say this. And timed feeding plans can quietly sabotage your supply and your baby's weight gain. So make sure you get into those in-deep questions with the lactation consultant you're interviewing. Now let's talk about some other things that I really think are important for you to ask a lactation consultant. I need you to ask her things about triple feeding, when she uses it, why she uses it, and if she has an exit strategy based on it. You need to see how often she goes to triple feeding in her practice. And if it's something that she commonly goes to, you need to know why. You need to know for how long she recommends triple feeding and what the exit strategy is from it. So ask her, do you make triple feeding plans? For how long? What is the exit strategy? Again, triple feeding without a clear reassessment plan is a fast track to burnout. I hear it so much. So make sure you get those questions answered. Let's talk about tools, products, and overuse. Okay, questions you can ask. Do you use nipple shields in your practice? If so, how often and when do you use them? Silverettes. This is going to be a key one. If she's recommending silverettes because you have a painful latch, silverettes are not the cure for a painful latch. Her teaching you latch is a cure for a painful latch. Those silverettes just mask pain. They don't get to the root. Nipple shields should be given very, very, very sparingly. I can tell you that in my practice, if I'm using a nipple shield, and there's very rare occasions that I use them, I go over the pros and the cons with mom. I ask her for follow-up visits. I show her how to use the nipple shield. I monitor baby's weight with her. I teach her how to latch still appropriately with a nipple shield. The main reason I use nipple shields in my practice is because a mom wants a baby to go back to breast and she doesn't want to wait. She wants an immediate response. So again, Very few and far between do I offer nipple shields. What about creams? Is she a lanolin kind of lactation consultant? If she's telling you lanolin, you guys should know the pros and the cons of lanolin. But again, be very careful. If she says, use lanolin to help treat sore nipples, she should also be saying, I sit with you and we go over latch. You guys know my viewpoint on lanolin? If you don't, I'm not a fan. Does she use a lot of SNS feeders, the supplemental nursing systems? If so, when does she use them? At what point in your breastfeeding journey does it become something she introduces? Or does she only use them for adoptive lactation or a mom who has little to no milk supply? All of those things are very important. Tools are temporary support, not first line fixes. So if we are overly relying on those tools, we're delaying skill development in your baby. Another good question you can ask her is, how long do you have moms use these tools? So, tools should support learning, not replace it. Now we're going to get on my soapbox about tongue ties and referrals. Are you ready? You need to ask, how many babies do you send for revisions? Now, the true incident of a baby's need for a revision, and we're finding even more about this to this date. And the American Academy of Pediatrics has made some really bold statements on how we are overly revising babies and that even these revisions we are doing aren't truly beneficial. But the studies show us that 1 to 3% of babies actually need the revision. So if this lactation consultant is specializing in revisions, that's scary. Because if only 1 to 3% of babies truly need that revision, she might be sending more than that. So, is she looking at function of the latch or the appearance of the tongue? You need to ask her that question. Are you looking at the function of the tongue or do you just look at it to look at it? Because almost every baby has some sort of tie, you guys. But they can eat around that tie and with that, and their anatomy is going to change. So again, ask her, how do you check function of the latch, even if you see a tie of some sort? Does she do conservative management first? Which means, does she work on that latch and give you time? Or does she immediately send you somewhere? Because her job is not to diagnose a tie. Her job is to support you and help you with latch to see if we can overcome this before we go and revise a tongue. Can she support families who decline revisions? Again, that goes back to, did she give you a couple of weeks to get latch down pat and good? If surgery is the first answer instead of latch work, you probably need to pause with her. All right. The next thing you need to know is, does she mandate follow-ups? What kind of access do you have with her? So, does she do mandated or optional follow-ups? In my practice, I do not mandate a single follow-up. I try to give you every single bit of information that I can give you in the time we have allotted. Do I recommend some moms have follow-ups? Yes, but it's based on the problem that was presented to me. And if I am offering you a plan that we're going to grow with and move with, and I'm giving you that time, you also need support during that time. And if I have stepped in and we have done something strategically different, I think a follow-up may help you, but I never mandate it. We should be giving you all the information that we can possibly give you in the time that we have with you. We shouldn't be holding back. Does she also offer a way to access her? Does she give you a phone number to call? Does she do check-ins with you? What is your responsibility when it comes to that access to her? On my end, I don't do a lot of questioning moms and reaching back out to moms because if they make a different decision than the one we came up with, I don't want them to feel guilty. I want them to still know I am here if you need me. Here's how to reach me. And I give them my number to reach me or my email to reach out to me. That they have ongoing access to me. But if they need me, I'm there. I am not going to jump in and keep pushing. Okay. The other thing is, how do they offer you emotional support and respect? Emotional support to me is probably 98% of my job. Normally, when moms are reaching out to a lactation consultant, they're broken. They're scared, they're anxious. Can she offer you the emotional support that you need? I think talk therapy is a big part of our job as lactation consultants. We need to sit in those moments with you and support you and validate you. And if you have someone who can't sit with you in moments when you struggle and offer validation and support, it's probably not a good person for you. If you leave the consult feeling calmer and not smaller, you found the right person. That should be everyone's goal as a lactation consultant. Your lactation consultant should reduce anxiety, not add to it. So I hope some of these kind of ideas have helped you and can help you grow and pick the right lactation consultant for you. Again, I offer virtual consultations. The link will be in the description of this podcast. You can always schedule with me. I do visits around the world, all over the place, and I am so happy to build that relationship with you if you need that from me. I also have a ton of social media platforms you can follow me on. They'll all be linked so that you can find me. But in closing, you're allowed to interview your support. You're allowed to. You're allowed to change providers. And you're allowed to choose a different feeding path. And that's okay. Breastfeeding support should feel like someone standing next to you, not standing over you. Make sure you're sharing this with a pregnant friend or a breastfeeding mom, because I think this is so important to understand. Remember, not all lactation consultants practice the same, and that can completely change your breastfeeding experience. It's never wrong to get a second, third, or fourth opinion. Offering emotional support to you should be one of the first jobs a lactation consultant does, because you deserve that. I hope this helps you. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. Again, several ways to connect with me are linked in the description. Have a great day.